Welcome back to For Life Without Borders.
With Sarah and Mikayla, who definitely weren't arguing right before we turned the camera on.
Maybe someday there will be a whole episode dedicated to what we just argued about.
I think that we could make it I would make it an episode right now, but
I don't want to do that and show my cards too early with my commitment issues and whatnot. So
we'll wait a year and then do it. I think things will have changed by then. So if you're listening to this and it's 2026, send us an email at podcast@promiseoflifenetwork.org. Encourage us to listen to the third episode in June 2025.
I think this is episode 44, I think.
Okay. And to give everyone an update.
Or 45.
Because I will. So what are we talking about today? We are going to talk about our Healthy Relationships Today program, which we've actually talked about before, but there's a reason it is timely now. And that is because our current Healthy Relationships Today coordinator is moving west, destination unknown.
Yeah, closer to family,
but, heading west. And we are currently seeking a new coordinator. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that means and why this program is important and why it belongs as part of Promise of Life Network and other pregnancy resource centers, because it's very pregnancy medical centers and resource centers. It's very common. And in fact, it's one of our oldest programs. So I would say it's one of our 2 oldest programs. It would be the same age, similar age as our parenting program.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, obviously, we were offering pregnancy testing before that, but we weren't medical. So I would consider medical to sort of be the new iteration of that. But yeah, This is old. We've been doing it for a long time. In fact, one of our OG presenters still works here, and she now supervises the program. One of our other presenters, not quite OG, but has definitely been around a while, also still volunteers here, although no longer in this particular program.
And your one of your presenters, coordinators also still works here.
Well, you do, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for remembering.
No, I was thinking of the older crowd who's been here for a while. But yes, Mikayla used to run. This was her entry into Promise of Life Network back when we were Alpha Omega Center.
Yeah.
And she came on as our abstinence educator. And now she's running our international department and chatting with me on a podcast.
Yeah. So you never know what'll happen if you become the HRT coordinator.
Anything.
Truly. Truly.
So a couple things are... Wow, there's so much to talk about with this topic.
Yeah.
And I would say you are more educated than I am on this just because you did run it for a few years. But what's the difference between sexual risk avoidance and comprehensive sexuality education?
Yeah. So comprehensive sex ed, CSE, whatever you want to call it. Some people use the term sexual risk reduction instead of SRA, sexual risk avoidance. So sexual risk reduction would be, they're going to do it anyway. Let's make it as safe as we can.
Right.
Use
and I think that's the common thing that we hear from adults.
Right.
Kids are going to have sex. You can't stop them. So you may as well make it safe.
Yes. So that's when you get into, okay, my daughter's 16. Let's put her on birth control.
Yep.
Let's teach a bunch of middle schoolers how to use a condom. Let's it's all this risk reduction. Right. But we know statistically, the only 100% way to avoid risk altogether is avoidance. It's abstinence.
If you don't want to catch this guy.
So you can reduce it. But it's never going to be 0.
Right. And that's the thing. And that's what people are saying. Oh, well, and this is something that we hear pretty commonly when we have teenagers who are pregnant. Didn't they wear a condom? Didn't their parents put them on birth control? The answers to both of those questions could be yes.
I can't tell you how many women on the chat line that I have talked to who are very pregnant and have been taking family planning in some form or another for months and months and months, years. Lots of them on the shot, lots of them with implants. It's not 100%.
To quote Jurassic Park, life finds a way.
Yes.
And we are geared as humans to procreate. God made us that way. Okay. We were created to have children. We're told to be fruitful and multiply. And so our bodies are designed to have children. When we want to interrupt having children, it's disrupting our body's natural processes. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm not saying that you should never use birth control. I'm not saying you should never have a vasectomy or a tubal ligation. What I'm saying is that what you're doing is you are actually changing the way your body is supposed to act and making it act in a way that it is not supposed to act. And so that's never going to be 100%. Right. And we've had a billion, not really, because there's not that many people in our area, but we've had a lot of clients who have come in and they are very faithfully using birth control or condoms or both, and they are still pregnant.
It just happens. Life
not to mention, yes, life finds a way.
guidelines.
There's an
Yeah. Sorry.
It's important to be very accurate to the peer-reviewed study that is in Jurassic Park, the original.
It's not Jeff Goldblum's line.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
That's a totally Jeff Goldblum line.
He's from Pittsburgh.
I don't like his politics.
No, but he is genuinely just a very interesting person.
He's great.
Yeah, I saw him last year.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is, are teens all having sex? And the answer is no.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
A lot of them. Too many of them.
Too many, but not all of them. So one of the things we hear is all teens have sex. Everyone's going to have sex. They're all going to do it. And so we have to offer them birth control and condoms, because otherwise they'll just all get pregnant and they'll all get STDs and the world will be terrible. So let's look at some research on teen sexual behavior. Among high school students, 70% of boys and 69% of girls have never had sexual intercourse. Those are high numbers.
Yeah, I was like, that's a very solid majority.
Mm-hmm. Between 1991 and 2021, the percentage of high schoolers that had never engaged in sexual intercourse increased from 45.9% to 70%.
Yeah, the early 2000s were very promiscuous.
Right, they were, because the parents are coming out of the sexual revolution. Mm-hmm. They're embracing those ideals, and today kids are realizing the price tag is a lot higher than they're willing to pay.
Yeah,
and the reality is, there's a lot of disease out there. There's a lot of things that you can catch and they're going to be with you forever. And kids don't want to run that risk. They're also seeing the really negative drawbacks of parents and other people in older generations having these kind of serial monogamy kind of relationships, or even not monogamy, not even. And they're seeing the detriment of that. And so I think there's been a move towards commitment and being thoughtful and making better choices. And of course, sexual risk avoidance education is huge for that. The percentage of Black male teens that have never engaged in sexual intercourse increased from 11.9% to 60.6% between 1991 and 2021. Between 1990 and 2022, teen birth rates have declined 78%. So a lot of times when we talk about the decline in the teen birth rate, people are like, well, yeah, because girls have access to birth control and boys have access to condoms and we're teaching safer sex, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. No, because safer sex does not reduce the sexual activity rate. So we're seeing a reduction in teen pregnancy in correlation with a reduction in teen sexual activity. Mm-hmm. And that's not because of comprehensive sexuality education. Mm-hmm. Not at all. In 2022, 98% and 89% of all teen births aged 15 to 17 and 18 to 19 were to unmarried parents. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago on our fatherhood podcast. Kids do better when they have both parents in the home. Mm-hmm. They just do. And so why are we working to reduce teen sexual behavior? There's a couple other reasons. We'll talk about those. But a big one is because kids born to teenagers are typically born into single parent homes. Usually that's just the mother, and that means they're going to be lacking that resident father that we talked about a couple weeks ago. The likelihood of using contraception increases by at least 25% the longer a teen delays sex. So this is another myth that we're told all the time, that if we teach kids abstinence, we're just teaching them not to use a condom. Oh, you haven't heard that one?
What?
Oh, yeah. So the idea is that if we don't teach safe sex,
they won't know.
Then they either won't know how, or they will think, this is actually the most convoluted reasoning, but people tell me this. They will think that it's wrong to prevent pregnancy because sex is wrong, and so they have to accept the consequences of their actions, which could be pregnancy. So they won't use a condom because that would be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really all over the place. But we're seeing that research shows us that if the teenager delays sex, they're actually more likely to use a condom or contraception.
You've got a little bit more frontal lobe to work with.
Yeah, and teenagers need that.
Yeah.
Only 10% in 2021, only 10% of currently sexually active high school students use dual methods of protection the last time they had sex with an opposite sex partner. So that would mean some sort of hormonal birth control and a barrier method like a condom. Yeah. But I would say almost always a condom, but there's other options too. So only 10%. So 90% of students having sex are using one method of contraception, or they're not using any methods of contraception. So teenagers are not making good choices, even with comprehensive sexuality education. Teens who initiate sex early in adolescence are at higher risk of STIs. Adolescents age 15 to 24 account for 25% of sexually active population. And half of all reported cases of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis were among adolescents and young adults. So they only account for 25% of the sexually active population, but they account for half of all reported STIs annually. Half. That's insane. So what are the benefits of sexual delay? Do you want to look at that one since I've been yammering on?
Sure. I would say the big one, and sure enough, like that's number one. Sexual delay and limiting the number of lifetime partners is important to decreasing the risk of pregnancy and STDs. So the less you have sex, the more, like, the less likely you are to get an STD.
Which is fair. If you only have one partner and your partner only has one partner, you will not catch an STD.
Yeah.
It's actually really magical.
Yeah. Like you don't have to worry about it. And so they talk about how, like, the most reliable way to avoid getting an STD is to just not do it. You can't get an STD if you aren't having sex, with very few exceptions.
There are
which
exceptions.
Would be, I know HIV can be transmitted via blood, and so that's like your used needles and potentially if your mother had HIV and didn't have any sort of intervention when you were born.
Some of the hepatitis.
Is hepatitis a STD?
It can be an STD, yeah.
Oh. Ugh. I didn't know that.
but it's not. I mean, it's not a straight up STD like gonorrhea or chlamydia or anything. Like that.
So there's a couple of exceptions, but by and large, especially in the United States today, with the way that our medical system is, if you're not having sex, you don't have to worry about getting an STD.
It's pretty rare.
It's really not a thing. And so they also say that delaying sex appears to aid in the permanence of future marriage.
So this is actually something that we talk to students about really frequently. And the idea that most people want to get married.
Yeah.
I would say
we're you're going to laugh at me for saying this given the argument that we had, but I would say that by and large, we are designed to seek commitment.
Awkward. So, so most kids want to get married and they want a successful marriage.
Yeah.
So delaying sex,
marriage,
nobody, and the thing is kids, Mikayla and I grew up in the generation that told parents, so our parents, that kids are fine in divorce.
Yeah.
And they're not. And kids know that. I was very lucky, very blessed to have parents that stayed married until my dad died. Same with you. Yep. Very stable homes. A lot of my friends, I would say most of my friends, depending on like which friend group I was talking about, had parents who were split up or they were like a product of a second marriage. So they had step siblings from previous marriages, half siblings from previous marriages. There was like some dysfunction there.
Yeah.
And all of those kids could tell you that divorce is bad for kids.
Yeah.
So they want to have a stable marriage. They want to have a long-lived marriage for themselves and their future children. And so sometimes just telling them like, hey, delaying sex now can actually help you have a better marriage later. Like that's a good reason.
Yeah. Yep. So it's aiding marriages. Future marriages are better off when teenagers remain abstinent. It says waiting to have children until marriage increases the likelihood of their flourishing. Children just do better with two parents in the home. Mm-hmm. Married. Waiting to have children until marriage decreases the likelihood that both parent and child will live in poverty. Being a single parent is hard.
It is.
Being parents together is hard enough as it is.
Mm-hmm.
The economy is not so great. And so having a partner to support you and your children, less chances of poverty.
It's important.
Yeah. And then it says, even as premarital sex has become more acceptable and common in modern dating, the lowest divorce rates in the first 5 years of marriage are found among married couples who have only had sex with each other. So again, it's aiding future marriages.
Right. And that marriage is the cornerstone that our society is built on.
Yeah.
Families, marriages,
nuclear families.
Stable nuclear families is where society is strongest. And so as adults, as leaders, we should be focusing on how to help kids work now towards having a healthy marriage in their future. And delaying sexual activity is a huge part of that.
Yep. So all of these statistics and reasons are worth pregnancy centers having some form of SRA, sexual risk avoidance program.
Right.
And I know a lot of pregnancy centers do. Like it is a very common.
It's very common. And the reason it is, so whenever we look at a program, we say, is it going to save lives from abortion? Is it going to save souls for Jesus?
Yeah.
And I want to see checking both of those boxes as much as possible. Mm-hmm. How does SRA do that? Well, most abortions are performed on unmarried women. Mm-hmm. And I would hazard a guess, which is a pretty educated guess, that some of the abortions performed on married women are being performed because the woman was unfaithful or because her husband was unfaithful. So there's some level of unfaithfulness that is causing this woman to think, I can't have this baby. So we don't see abortion in healthy, stable marriages. And so teaching kids about sexual risk avoidance, teaching them to delay sexual activity, teaching them how to have strong, healthy marriages and relationships is going to lower the abortion rate. So it doesn't save lives from abortion because the lives never existed to begin with. So it creates a more stable society where fewer abortions happen because marriages are strong, relationships are strong, and kids are making good choices. And so it's very much in line with our mission and vision.
Yeah. And again, these stats show that it's effective. So it's not just, we think this is something worth doing and we don't know if it's making a difference, but like, it seems like it's in line with what we want to do. And I know that we have ways of keeping up with stats and changing opinions, and we take surveys before and after and whatnot, but it shows that there are some research studies that have, they're saying SRA programs show significant behavioral changes in improving teen outcomes, and that there are studies that show early stage positive attitudinal impacts that tend to predict decreased sexual initiation rates. And compared to peers, students in SRA education programs are more likely to delay sexual initiation if sexually active. They're more likely to discontinue or decrease their sexual activity, no less likely to use a condom if they are initiating sex. They're more likely to excel academically and less likely to engage in other risk behaviors. Because that's the thing, is like having sex as an unmarried teenager is a risky behavior.
Well, and it's going to lead to other risky behaviors. We do not
teach high schoolers how to smoke in a healthy manner.
Right.
We don't teach them how to underage drink in a healthy manner. So why would we teach them how to have sexual activity in a safer manner?
Safer, because it's not safe.
Right.
And they don't even call it safe sex anymore. They call it safer sex because they know that there's no such thing as safe sex, especially when you're talking about teenagers and especially when you're talking about multiple partners.
Yes.
And I know that there's always people out there, someone will come at us and be like, well, I met my husband at 16 and we've been together for 55 years. That's great. That's not the norm.
Yeah.
Most high school relationships are not going to last. And so now you've got this bond with this other person. You've exposed yourself potentially to diseases with this other person. And you have potentially engaged in other risky behaviors. Because if you're engaging in sexual activity, you're potentially also engaging in smoking and drinking, partying, and other kinds of things. And all of this engagement in risky behaviors is pulling your focus away from where it should be, which is academics.
Right.
And like becoming a good person and growing up and getting enough sleep. And all of that is going to impact all of your other areas of life.
Yeah.
So our Healthy Relationships Today program has actually gone through a couple evolutions. It used to be called, like back in the 80s, it was Abstinence is the Best Choice, ABC, which is cute. I can see why we don't use it anymore.
It's very 80s, but
it was 80s, cute. But it was good.
Yeah.
And then it was Life Matters after that. And then under Mikayla, we rebranded to Healthy Relationships Today, or HRT. And so who we are looking for, Promise of Life Network is seeking to hire someone to coordinate that program.
Yeah.
And I get very excited about coordinators because it's one thing to be hired and asked to do a job.
Yeah.
Okay. You go and maybe you're going to go work at the widget factory, and every day you go in and you have to make 100 widgets. And if you make 99 widgets, you get in trouble. But if you make 105, you get a bonus. And so your goal is to go in and make as many widgets as you can. We don't do widgets. There's no widgeting here.
Yeah.
We want to see lives saved, transformed, marriages built, families strengthened, and the gospel advanced. And so the biggest opportunity to do that, I believe, is in the hands of our program coordinators.
Yeah.
Not me, not even the board, but it's in the hands of the people who are coordinating the actual programs, because they have a chance to like zero in, hardcore focus on whatever it is. And in this case, it's our abstinence program, and make it the best possible program it could be.
Yeah.
And that's incredible.
Yeah.
Like that's an amazing opportunity. Get in more schools, get in front of more students, offer more subjects, offer more teaching. Really dig into why does it matter? Why is it important? Understanding the rationale behind that. Potentially, like we would love to have enough schools where we have to train a second presenter.
Yeah.
And now you're training and mentoring and teaching a second presenter. And so there's just so much opportunity in this coordinator position.
Well, and it's because you're working with, teenagers and kids, there's so many opportunities for like new things. it can't be stagnant, right? And if it's stagnant, it's not going to go well,
Right, that's
because
not
you
good.
have to be able to keep up with the youths. And that's what I really enjoyed about being the HRT coordinator, was like I got to do a bunch of cool stuff and think big thoughts. And
you really were up on your slang.
Yeah. My slang has gone downhill since I stopped being the
Mhm.
HRT coordinator. I keep up with it some because I did teach college, and so I had like half a foot in the door. But like I still don't know what skibbity means. I've got most of the others. I know what Ohio means, but I don't understand skibbity.
My kids explained skibbity to me, and I still don't understand it. So
Yeah.
I would maybe give up on that.
So I'll find a new dream. But yeah, it's a really cool position.
And there's statistical evidence, and this is often squashed by a certain political party who shall not be named. It's the left. That SRA education, sexual risk avoidance education, is far superior to comprehensive sexuality education in its outcomes. Yet that side of the aisle is still pushing comprehensive sexuality education. So what comprehensive sexuality education is, oh yeah, we'll talk about abstinence, probably in passing.
It's an option.
Yeah, it's an option. But we'll also talk about like how to put a condom on a banana.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about where to get an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about how like do whatever feels right, and sex is your right, and you're an empowered individual, and your parents should be supporting you no matter what you want to do. There's a group that puts out videos that students are supposed to watch in schools. So the literal idea of these videos is to watch it in school. And one of the videos I watched that was geared towards kindergarten was essentially shaming a kindergartner, a boy, for not wanting to be naked in front of his teacher.
Yeah.
Like, what in the grooming?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's comprehensive sexuality education.
Yes. And there's so much, so many other things that we've talked about on the podcast that are lumped in. Like, I know that there are CSE programs out there who speak favorably of pornography.
Oh, for sure.
And we did a whole episode about just like the absolute destruction that pornography does to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And yet CSE, like it's considered a normal part of a sex life.
Yes. A lot of really aggressive, angry, violent stuff is considered normal in these programs. Some of the things that are being given to students are so graphic that they have been not permitted to be read in school board meetings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you're putting it in front of high schoolers and you're uncomfortable hearing it as an adult, then maybe it shouldn't be in front of high schoolers.
Right.
Like, there's stuff that Mikayla and I will not talk about on this podcast because it is frankly inappropriate.
Yeah. And we're two probably some of the more open people.
Yes.
Like we'll talk about a lot of stuff, but there are some things that it's like, nope, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
It's not. It's
just
not,
weird, and it's not appropriate.
It's not appropriate, and there's things that
and it's not beneficial for us to talk about.
No, and it's not, because it's just like voyeurism at some point.
Yeah.
But I have found myself to feel very uncomfortable and awkward talking about CSE, comprehensive sexuality education, with men.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, but we're putting this in mixed gendered classrooms
with children.
Yeah. Talk about confusion. One of the other frustrations I have is with parents.
Yeah.
So not personally. So if you know me, don't think, oh, wow, I wonder if that's just talking about me. I'm not. At least I hope I'm not.
Yeah.
But I've seen plenty of people on social media who are like, oh, yeah, I totally support my kids in their sexual exploration. And if they want to have their boyfriend over, well, he's welcome for breakfast. And she can have boys over in her room anytime she wants. And she can shut the door anytime she wants. And he can have his girlfriend over whenever he wants. And if they need a safe place to be, then they can be here. No. Like, your kid's house.
Get that boy out of your house.
Yes. Your kid's house, your kid's bedroom should be a place of safety.
Yeah. That
not
is
a place.
No boys allowed zone.
Yeah. And kids need boundaries. Like, Stop
being weird.
I have 6 of them. And even frankly, very mature 15-year-old.
Yeah.
Needs boundaries.
Like, yeah. I love Tommy. He's so mature.
Yeah.
But I ain't afraid to tell Tommy a boundary.
Yeah.
I need to.
Yeah. Like, it baffles me.
He's
that
15.
That
he's still 15.
He is 15 years old, and people are trusting people with like very little frontal lobe development to make good decisions about their sexual activity.
Yeah.
I can't trust him to like eat decent breakfast in the morning.
No, I was like, poor Tommy has really been through it. And I'm like, I wouldn't know. And I love him.
He's great.
He's so mature, and he's very responsible.
But he's still 15.
And he's a good boy, but he's 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't bringing a girlfriend over to your house, I'll tell you that much.
Well, I mean, you could bring her over and they could sit nicely in the living room where I can
sit
keep
on the
my
couch
eye on them.
across from each other with a book in the middle, leave room for the Holy Spirit.
The Bible in the middle.
Leave room for the Holy Spirit.
I'm getting the King James out.
Yeah.
Get the old one out with the family names in it. Great Grandpa Higgins is going to sit in between the two of them. But anyway, that's just my little rant. But like, parents, talk to your kids about sex. Have the conversation, explain what it is. Start explaining good touch, bad touch as soon as they can be potty trained.
Yeah.
Like, that's when you should start explaining it.
Yeah. I was like, especially if they're in a school setting, especially when they're young, and you've got teachers helping in it,
right.
Like little kids need help going to the bathroom.
Right. And there is appropriate touch and there is inappropriate touch. And they should know the difference as soon as they're able. I mean, even before they're able to verbalize.
Yeah.
And sexuality and sex should be a conversation that happens is an ongoing conversation
the
whole time.
It's not the talk and then you're done.
Right. You can't be like, well, we sat down with you at 12 and explained things and we're done now.
Yeah.
Talk about your expectations. Talk about what the Lord wants. Talk about what sex is and where it's beautiful and lovely, which is inside a marriage, and where it's not okay, which is literally anywhere else.
Yeah.
Talk about same-sex attraction and how it's not something that's godly and honoring to God. And back all that up with scripture. There's plenty of books. There's plenty of articles. There's plenty of things online to walk you through this. And saying, oh, well, it was awkward and I didn't want to is not a good excuse.
Yeah.
But that being said, as much as we would love for parents to be taking point on this, there are, unfortunately, as I already shared, there are parents who are not taking point on this, or if they are, they're doing it in a negative way or a way that harms their kids, and they're leaving their kids confused.
Right.
And so our goal, as with Healthy Relationships Today, is to make sure that the kids in our community know that it's okay to say no, that it can be healthier to say no, and that it's going to help them in the long run.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we hear about, and we already kind of mentioned it, is like, oh, so you're doing this so kids don't get pregnant.
I mean, partly, yeah, like that would be an ideal situation.
Right. But there's more to it than that. So there are way more benefits to individuals who delay a sexual debut. So that would be like their first sexual experience.
We're talking about building healthy families.
Right.
I mean, we just went through all those statistics. And also STDs are not good. You don't want one. And I know that there's stigma around having STDs, and people, especially online, are trying to decrease the stigma. Like, I think I've talked before about people who are like very open about the STDs that they've contracted, and they're like, oh, I'm going for like my monthly STD test, and let's get the girls together, squad up, we're going to get our chlamydia test. Normalizing that kind of behavior is bizarre.
Right.
And so, yeah, we don't want, teenage pregnancies aren't ideal. Having an STD is not ideal.
But there's also a lot of positive benefits to delaying sex.
Yeah.
So when we go into students, we talk about the physical, right? But we also talk about the social, emotional, spiritual, and psychological benefits.
Yes.
To delaying sex. So there's 5 areas, not just one.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times as parents, as teachers, as guidance, as mentors, whatever, we're really focusing on physical. You don't want to get pregnant. You don't want to get an STD. Okay, but what about the social implications?
Yeah.
One of the things that we're seeing with teenagers is revenge porn.
Yep.
And it's very closely tied to sexual activity because a girl, usually a girl, and it can be a boy.
Yeah. It's statistically,
it's likely to be a girl, sends a picture of herself to her boyfriend that is meant to be between the two of them because they've had sex or they're about to have sex. Yeah. And she is sending him a picture of herself in less clothing than perhaps is ideal.
Yeah.
And so they break up because it's high school.
Yep.
And they're probably not going to get married. And that picture is now all over the school. There are significant social consequences.
Yeah.
And this girl's life is in a lot of ways really wrecked because people are going to remember that forever.
Yeah. Well, the internet is forever.
Yes. That picture's not going away.
Yeah.
There are emotional consequences to having sex. Teens that are having sex are all tied up in that sexual relationship. They are not building other healthy relationships with other people. They may stay in an unhealthy relationship longer because they've chosen to have sex with that person. And all of this is causing a tremendous amount of distraction, and it's going to impact their emotions.
Yeah. I was like, well, and I mean, sexual contact with another person induces oxytocin.
Yes.
So you're chemically bonding to another person, and that is tough to break.
Mm-hmm.
just very tough to break. I actually saw some really interesting stats the other day on physical touch and like oxytocin. It was kind of a weird, like, the way that they were presenting it was kind of weird because it was essentially like, you know, you could kiss, like, it takes 7 seconds of a kiss before oxytocin starts.
So you should
generating.
only kiss your boyfriend
So it was
for 6
essentially
seconds?
like, if you're concerned about it, like 6 seconds is the maximum, and then like you're more likely to like slide the slippery slope after that.
You need like a toothbrush timer, but for kissing.
Right. And I was kind of like, that is an interesting perspective to have. Like, but it is interesting to some extent. I don't know that that's like the conclusion I would have landed on, but it was, you know, just to see like the fact that choices that we make with our physical bodies do impact us chemically.
Yes.
And a lot of the quote psychological components and emotional components are chemical for a human being.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. Our chemical and we are our brain, right?
Yes.
Our brain is us. Like we can't separate the two. And so those chemicals, those hormones, they are who we are. And we learned about that when we talked about This Is Your Brain on Birth Control.
Yeah.
Like your hormones are you.
Yeah.
You don't have hormones. You are hormones.
Yes.
And so those hormones are going to impact you. So what about teenagers? What do they say? So most teens actually support the sexual risk avoidance model, which is interesting because it's not just adults, i.e. us, like ramming this down kids' throats and saying, you have to take this. This is the best thing for you. And they're like, no, we don't want this. So we already talked about this, but most teens are choosing to wait for sex, which is beautiful. And I love it. And I wish it was higher. Most sexually experienced teens wish they had waited.
Yeah.
About half of sexually experienced teens express regrets about having sex so soon. These statistics indicate that sexually experienced teens are open to a different choice in the future. Changing direction by building relationships without sex can resonate with sexually experienced teens, and research validates this to be the case. So this isn't adults who are looking back and saying, hey, I wish I had waited as a teen. These are teenagers saying they wish they had delayed sexual activity.
Yeah.
The percentage of teens who have not had sex has increased more than 28% in the past 2 decades, an encouraging sign that the wait for sex message is relevant and continues to resonate with youth. This is all despite the fact that too many messages they receive are encouraging them to have sex. So most forms of media, social media, TV, movies, music, that teens are being exposed to is going to encourage sexual activity.
Yeah.
I have not heard a hit song talking about waiting for sex.
No. And if there is a song out there, I can guarantee you it's cringe. Like that's
Probably
just the
pretty
nature
bad.
of it.
It's
Like
probably written
like
by
I
a
think
Baptist
of I think of
pastor.
those like virginity rock sweatshirts.
I don't understand those.
Like those are cringe. Let's just call a spade a spade.
But they were really popular.
But they were like so popular. And I'm pretty sure that at least half the people I knew who wore those,
it wasn't accurate.
This ain't that, you know?
Okay.
Like it would have been cringe.
It's cringe. So yeah, if there is a song out there,
I don't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear it.
It was probably written by a Baptist pastor.
Or like
no
Stephen
offense.
Curtis Chapman or something. I love you, Stephen Curtis Chapman,
Is
but
Stephen
like
Curtis Chapman the one that wrote the "Modest is Hottest" song that caused all that controversy?
I don't think so. I hope not.
It was a joke. Like it was satire.
He was kind of just like minding his business, I feel like, in his like black turtleneck. And
no, there was a guy. I wonder if it was him. I'd have to look it up. Somebody wrote a song and like everyone was freaking out about it. And he's like, it's a joke.
Yeah.
Like it was a joke. It was a huge, big joke. His daughter was in on it. She was in like the video or whatever. And they're like, you're the purity culture, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, laugh.
Yeah.
Like touch some grass.
So don't write hit songs about abstinence.
Well, you probably won't.
You probably won't. But if you were thinking maybe I would,
don't try. So even though they're hearing a ton of messages in media, from family, from friends, even possibly even from their church, because there are plenty of churches that are not really teaching the gospel.
Yeah.
Teenagers are still choosing to delay sexual activity. And that shows us that they understand the consequences. They understand it's not healthy. They understand that it's not good for them. Now, does that mean that they're avoiding sex until marriage? Okay, possibly, probably not. In fact, statistics are still showing overwhelmingly people are choosing to engage in sex before they get married, which is not ideal.
No, but at least we're delaying it a little bit.
Yes, and delaying sex until after high school is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. I would prefer people wait until marriage.
Yeah.
It's tough. Most of my friends did not wait until marriage. Now, most of them only were with their fiance.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, I feel like the Christian circles, that's kind of
that's kind
the
of
common thing. Like, well, we're engaged and
engagement isn't marriage.
Engagement isn't marriage. This is not the New Testament. But we were engaged and we knew we were going to get married and like we didn't want our wedding night to be awkward. That was actually the most common reason.
Like,
yes.
It's going to be like, wouldn't it have been awkward anyway?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, I only had one experience. So I can't tell you for sure.
Married, so I'm like, I don't know.
But like the thing is like, yeah, your wedding, if you choose to wait until your wedding night, it is going to be awkward, but you have like the rest of your life to not be awkward.
It's just awkward all the way around.
Yeah.
I feel like
eventually,
wedding night, not wedding night.
Right.
I don't know.
I did not really understand that.
I don't want to judge your friends, but
I feel like that is honestly though, that most,
a
lot of Christians are going to wait till they're engaged, which is not ideal, but still better than high school.
It's better
And we can acknowledge as Christians that the most beneficial thing to do is to wait till marriage. And we can teach that it's to wait till marriage and still celebrate delay to a point.
Don't let me. I had something in my sock. It was like really bothering me.
Your like entire shoe your shoe is not in your sock.
No, I took my sock.
Not in your shoe.
Because there's still something in it. I don't know what it is.
Were you like on gravel or something?
I don't know. I think maybe I stepped on something before I put my socks on and like it's in my sock.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
All right. So what about parents? Do parents support SRA education? And yes, so 3 significant studies found overwhelming support for the SRA approach to sex education. So we talked a little bit about parents. I did share some terrible examples, but 7 out of 10 Americans want students to learn to avoid all the consequences of teen sex, not just pregnancy. Most Americans deemed the topics covered in SRA as essential for sex education class. And nearly 3 in 4 Americans believe it is vital that high school students understand that teen sex can impact their futures. Nearly 9 out of 10, so 90% of parents, strongly support the way SRA programs share the medically accurate limitations of condoms for preventing pregnancy and disease. So one of the fears, and this was big in like the early 2000s, which was a wild time, apparently, based on statistics, was if we tell kids that condoms aren't really 100% effective, they just won't use them. And so we were actually, as pregnancy centers in the early 2000s, counseled not to talk about the negatives. Because they were like, oh, well, if you tell kids that they could fail, they just won't use them and then there won't be any protection at all.
Okay.
And statistics are not bearing that out.
All right. Yeah. Critical thinking skills.
They were not big in the early 2000s.
Oh, my goodness.
It was a wild time for pregnancy help. So I know I rattled off a ton of statistics, but the reality is that we've got to be teaching our kids about sexual risk avoidance. Yes. Not just sexual risk reduction. And pregnancy centers, by and large, are the only organizations that are doing that.
Yeah.
So if this is important to you, and I hope it is, if you have kids or grandkids or no kids or think about wanting to know or have or meet kids, so that's everyone, call your local pregnancy center, find out if they have an SRA program, and find out if it's in your local schools. So one of the really neat things is that one of the best voices to get this kind of program into a school is a teacher, but the second best voice is going to be parents.
Yeah.
You don't need to go to your principal. You don't need to go to your administrator. You don't need to go to your school board. Call up your school's health teacher and say, hey, our local pregnancy center has this great SRA program. My son, my daughter is going to be in your class next year. I would absolutely love for them to learn about it. How can I connect you?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend talking with the pregnancy center before you talk to anyone else.
Right. Don't guarantee they can do it if they can't. They're going to be like, you said what?
People often ask, like, how are you even allowed in schools? Because our program is anywhere from 2 to 5 days. We kind of take what we can get.
Mm-hmm.
And we speak with middle schoolers and high schoolers. We've done some like college events and youth groups and things like that. But typically we're in like 7th grade, 8th grade, and then high school.
Yeah.
And people ask, like, well, how could you get in? One, the state of Pennsylvania still currently requires abstinence be taught in our school systems. They're always trying to do away with that. But we're hanging in there. Yeah. So by law, your child has to be taught abstinence in a public school in Pennsylvania. And a lot of teachers don't want to do that. And so we have the great opportunity of saying, don't worry about it. We'll come in and we'll do it for you.
Yes.
And we'll
do it for free.
Yes. And so a lot of the connections we have are with teachers, and most of the teachers are super supportive of what we do. Like, they love that we're there. They think it's a really good cause. This is not the time for you to go directly to your school board and talk about the abstinence work that
Please don't do that.
Don't do that.
That's so weird.
I can't think of a single school that we work with the school board to be in.
Nope.
Quite frankly, I think if some school boards knew we were there, it could potentially stir a pot.
Right. We don't want to stir the pot.
There's
Leave
no
the
need
pot
to ruin
alone.
a good thing.
Just talk to the health
don't
teacher.
Don't fix what ain't broke. Talk to your pregnancy center. Ask them. And if they have an abstinence coordinator, they should be able to tell you what schools they're in and
what grades.
Work with them. And if they're not in your school, you can be that voice that's like, hey, I think this would be great. But like, talk to your pregnancy center first.
Don't go off the rails.
Don't go off the rails.
And if you're in our area, talk to us and we'll tell you what schools we're in and what grades and what schools we're not in. And then if you have a connection at one of those schools, you can make that connection.
Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons why a pregnancy center might not be in a school. And it might not be because the school doesn't want them there.
Right.
Like there's a lot of politics involved.
Good point.
Yeah.
So what's our Jesus moment, Mikayla?
Sex is for marriage, and anytime it happens outside of marriage, it's just typically not. It doesn't go well. There's grace. You don't have to live. I think this is kind of the big thing. Like, you don't have to. Just because you have doesn't mean you have to continue.
Right. It's not like a one and done. Like, oh, I had sex once and now I have to have sex every time someone asks me.
Yeah. There's
you can just
much
say,
grace.
I changed my mind.
Yep. There's so much grace. When it comes to, well, everything, but especially that. So
yes.
So
seek forgiveness.
Yes.
Seek healing. Begin having healthy relationships if you're not in healthy relationships now. Set those boundaries.
Yeah.
And get married if you're not married and you want to be with someone.
Yeah. If you are cohabitating with someone, what are you doing?
Get the face. What was that?
Because I'm like,
you need to get on YouTube and see that face.
Suspicious.
Yeah.
The eyebrow raise. I'm like,
just because you're an adult doesn't mean that God has given you free reign to sleep around and shack up with your significant other. So,
like, if you're literally living together, just get married.
And if you don't want to get married, then why are you living together? Yeah. We should talk about cohabiting.
We should actually. Yeah.
All right. That's going to be a future topic. All right. So stay tuned. And soon, maybe next week, you will hear all.